we're going to video it. Okay, so on the homework, we're going to go over all 3 problems because there's only 3. On this first problem, when it says sketch on all these problems, it is really just looking for a sketch. You don't need to find the max and the min. You just need to know where does it cross the x-axis and what's the basic behavior. Is it disco? Where is it? What's the end behavior? So I don't really care how high or far down these are. I just want to see it crosses here, and this one goes here, and this one goes here, and there's 2 turns. So I can look at it, and I can find my zeros right away from my calculator, and they're -4, -1, and 3. Because of that, I don't really even need to go through synthetic division on this problem. It asks me to give the factored form. Well, if you have the zeros, how do you go from zeros to factors? Add an x and switch the sign. So really, the question is give factored form. Okay, add an x, switch the sign. Add an x, switch the sign. Add an x, switch the sign. And I already found the zeros from the calculator. So this one's kind of a waste to do synthetic. But it said do synthetic, so we're going to do synthetic. Doesn't matter which one you start with. I could have started with any of these. I happen to start with -4 because it was the one farthest on the left. So I do synthetic, and you have to get a 0 remainder because you know it's a 0. So if you don't, you made a mistake. So I could keep going at this point, and I'm going to show you in a later homework problem how you can keep going. But this is pretty easy to factor. I started with x to the 3rd. This is 2 numbers that multiply to be -3 and add up to be -2. So there's my 2 factors. So this one really wasn't even necessary to do synthetic, and it wasn't that hard either method. The next one, again, your basic sketch. There's only one integer answer on this one. It crosses at -1. The other places it crosses are not integers. They're going to be decimals. And on this one too, you kind of need to zoom in to see that there are 2 answers here. And you should know there's 2 answers because I see that this is x to the 3rd. That means I need to have 3 answers. And imaginary answers come in pairs. They have to come in groups of 2. So the fact that if you look at this and it looks like it only crosses 2 times, you can't have just one imaginary answer. So that's your hint to like, ooh, I might want to zoom in here and see what's going on. And then when you zoom in, you can see there are 2 answers very close to each other. So the only one I can do synthetic division with is the integer answer, which is -1. So I do synthetic. Again, your remainder needs to be 0. And then I'm left with this. This is x squared. This is my x. This is my constant. I'm left with x squared minus 2. This does not factor. It is not a difference of squares. Don't try to make it a difference of squares. But you can easily solve this using the square root method. Square root method means I'm going to move the 2 to the other side. I'm trying to get x by itself. And when I do that, I get x squared equals 2. And once the x squared is by it, take the square root of both sides. And when you do that, remember there's a plus or a minus. So I get x equals plus or minus the square root of 2. So that means that's this is plus the square root of 2, and this point here is minus the square root of 2. In terms of the factored form, because this didn't factor, that's as far as you go form. So you're going to actually write x squared minus 2, and then your second factor comes from here, add an x and switch the sign. We just said this is 1, 0, it's -1. This is the square root of 2, that's negative square root of 2. All right, my last one. Again, we do our sketch, and I actually get 2 integer answers. I get -2 and 4, and then this one doesn't cross at a tick mark. So again, it doesn't matter which one I start with. I could start with either -2 or -4. I happen to start with -2. You'll get the same answer if you start with -4. I do synthetic. I get a 0 remainder because it is a 0. And I don't even need to rewrite it. I'm going to do synthetic again. I have another 0. So I can keep doing synthetic until I run out of zeros. If I gave you like an x to the 6th function and I gave you 4 zeros, you could keep doing synthetic 4 times. You can keep going until you run out of integer answer zeros. So I do synthetic, and then I'm going to do it again with the other one, with the 4. Now, this is tricky because you got to remember where you are. So either think about it as your final answer is remainder, constant, x, or start from the top and kind of go, I know I started with x cubed, then that one went down to x squared, then that one went to x. So this final answer is 2x minus 1, which is a factor. And I can solve that by setting it equal to 0, and I find x is 1/2. So my zeros are the 2 from here, -2 and 4, and this one is 1/2. That's a factor. And my other two factors come from add an x and switch the sign, add an x and switch the sign.